Well, welcome to the Impactus podcast. I'm Dean Brenton, and we are here to equip you as men for a life of purpose and godly impact. If you were to rate the health of your marriage or family today, how would you score? 10 out of 10 living in bliss, 5 out of 10 with some challenges and struggles, or even lower, like you need to call 911? Well, you know what? Marriages and families do struggle, and it is normal to go through different seasons. But the good news is you don't have to struggle alone. There are supports to help you and your family, counselors, churches, and ministry organizations who exist to come alongside you wherever you find yourself on the journey. One of those organizations is FamilyLife Canada. They're a ministry of power to change, and they exist to bring help and hope to every marriage and family. They believe the family is the foundation of every community, that a healthy marriage is the cornerstone of a strong family, and the ultimate and lasting strength of every marriage and family is found in a relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, I'm delighted to have Neil and Sharol Josephson with us today on the podcast. They are former directors of FamilyLife Canada, formerly a Bible college president and a TV news anchor. Neil and his wife Sharol have devoted the second season of life to marriage and family ministry. First, they served at a large church in California. Now they're serving with FamilyLife Canada and now in a global capacity with that organization. Neil and Sharol have been married for 41 years. They love Jesus. They love each other. They love their family, and especially their 4 remarkable grandchildren. You know, it is a privilege to be able to bring you solid biblical and practical content through these podcasts. We'd be really grateful if you would subscribe and share our podcast and leave us a review on the platform you use, not for us, but to get more people to experience this content. And if you would like to support the work of this ministry and these podcasts, please head over to impactus.org/give and consider becoming a monthly partner or making a one-time donation to help us continue this vision to see every man become, grow, and live as a disciple of Jesus. Now, let's get into today's episode. Well, welcome to the Impactus podcast, Neil and Sharol. It is so good to have you with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
We've been looking forward to this.
Oh, it's great to have you with us. We're going to talk about a whole lot of things and your recent involvement with us at our conferences in a moment. But I want to start first. Give us your backstory. Tell us a little bit about your family and your ministry and how you got connected and became a part of FamilyLife Canada.
Well, we should talk about the career part. Sharol spent her life in broadcast.
25 years in
Wow.
television news primarily. Mm-hmm.
And I was an educator, first public school, and then about 20 years in private Christian higher education. And then in 2006, a friend of ours who was pastoring a really big church in California said, would you come down here and start a marriage ministry? We kind of looked at each other and go, really? Has he got the right guy?
We are married, but beyond that, we don't know anything.
We were married in 1978. So we had a few miles on the tires. But so we went to this large church, 7,000 people. And he said, look, we help people get married and we have a counseling center and divorce care. If you break up, we're going to look after you. But in between I do and I'm done, we don't do anything. And so we had this huge opportunity to come down with this massive church and this huge group of people and try to figure out that donut hole between I do and I'm done. Yeah. So we've been doing marriage ministry since 2006.
And then in 2010, we were called to come back to Canada, which is our home country, to lead FamilyLife Canada as national director. So it was a short 4-year period in the church, but man, did we ever learn a lot. We'd had dozens of conversations every week. So it was like we were accumulating data and learning the whole time. And we feel like it was a great training ground for us.
It's like dog years. 4 years there was like 20 years somewhere else.
Absolutely. And your role has changed fairly recently, right? With FamilyLife Canada. Tell us about that.
Since 2010, Sharol and I co-directed FamilyLife Canada. Mm-hmm. At the end of 2023, we stepped back and handed off to another great couple, Brent and Celeste Trickett from Saskatoon, younger, great leaders. So they picked it up. And then God sort of brought an opportunity for us to work with FamilyLife Global. There's FamilyLife in about 100 countries around the world, and FamilyLife Global tries to encourage them all. So we haven't even figured it out, Brent. We're really just getting going. But that's the vision, is that in every country, we'd nurture family.
You call him Brent. It's Dean. Brent is the new leader.
Oh,
of
yeah.
Life Canada.
Well, Brenton is my last name, so it's all a mess. So that's fine.
That's right.
No, that's fantastic.
It's a privilege then to kind of mentor and coach leaders around the world. So
Yeah,
we're excited to be able to see family life flourish around the globe.
that's exciting. That is so good. Tell us a little bit about the mission of Family Life Canada or Family Life Global. Like, what is it really that you're trying to accomplish and the impact that you're trying to have?
Well, we have a kind of an audacious goal, which is to bring help and hope and Jesus to every marriage and every family in Canada.
I love it.
So we know we can't do that on our own. We have a staff of about 40 across the country, but even if our staff works crazy, and they do, and we work crazy, and we do, we're never going to be able to accomplish that. So very quickly, our strategy became, how do we equip volunteers, men and women, to encourage the marriages and the families in their neighborhoods and in their communities? And then how do we come alongside churches to help them have effective, kind of outreaching marriage and family ministries? Because as Neil pointed out, in this huge church, they did nothing for marriages in between I do and I don't. And that's very true of most churches in Canada as well. And I mean, we've heard this from pastors. They acknowledge that this is an area of that they want to grow in. So we coach and mentor churches and come alongside and provide a lot of resources to our volunteers, which we call home builders. And there's almost 5,000 of them across the country. So, you just think about how multiplicative that is, right? You got 5,000 couples investing in the marriages and the families in their part of the world. So that's been our vision. That's been our strategy. And it's up to God to bring the fruit, but we're working hard towards that.
That's amazing. What kind of resources and tools do you put in the hands of marriages and families to do that?
Yeah, great question, because sometimes we fire up volunteers and then they go charging out the door and they go, what do we do? And the prime tools we put in their hands is, if you're working in your local community, your local church, people can host a workshop, whether it's bringing in staff live or more likely a video-based workshop. Start a small group. We're big fans of mentoring. We've created a mentoring program that's easily accessed. You can do it in a tiny church or a huge church. That's been a great tool that a lot of people have bought into. And then, the big sort of come and see event is our weekend getaways. And they're a weekend marriage conference. You just come away, the two of you, and that's a platform for a lot of people to start dreaming about not just their own marriage, but what they could do.
That's really
We have
cool.
a podcast. We have FamilyLifeCanada.com has a lot of free resources, video, print, blogs. Check it out.
That's fantastic. Of course, we're somewhat familiar with the ministry because we've been partners for quite a long time and have shared resources and content and those things. So it's just wonderful to see the extension into areas like we're really, of course, focused on speaking to men and men's issues. But, I just love partnering with folks like yourself who are just doing that to strengthen families and marriages. Now, the family is a pretty complex kind of a conversation today, more than ever. How have you had to adapt the ministry from, the nuclear 2.5, husband and wife, 2.5 kids and a dog, to the complexity of what family is like today?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah. Well, we start off by not presuming that we know what families are.
Yeah.
Right. So we try not to come with expectations of what it looks like. And we don't presume that when couples come to our conferences or when they show up at our marriage or our parenting events, that it's that 2.5, mom and dad. And we just don't assume that to start with.
And we live in a vast country. I mean, it's a country of regions. And so, for example, cohabitation is much higher in Quebec than elsewhere in Canada, though it's rising in pretty much across the country. So you have to have a different approach there. So families, we pay a lot more attention to blended families. There's a lot of resources you can connect through our website. So many families now. And if it's not your personal family, it's your kid's family or your brother's family or your sister's
Everybody
family. Everybody
has a step relationship in their lives. Again, if it's not your kids or your grandkids, it's a niece or nephew or,
These are complex.
And,
and so we're trying to respond to that.
But here's the other piece that we believe is we can't possibly address all these complicated and multiple versions of family. But our home builders, these volunteers who live next door to them, they know exactly what their situation is. They know what their needs are. And so our goal is to equip those people, these home builders, to care for the complicated needs in their community, because they'll know, because one size does not fit all. So we create resources, but then we hope that our home builders customize it, to the, and the churches that we work with customize it to the people in their community, in their sphere. There's a lot of resources out there, but people don't know how to get them. So we both create resources and we curate some of the best and then offer them to home builders and to churches, because man, it is complicated.
Wow. Yeah.
And another dynamic that we're trying to respond to is in Canada right now, people are getting married older than they used to. And that means a whole bunch of different things. But at the very least, it means a lot more relational baggage that they bring with them. There's a lot more relationships that they've lived in and out of. There's a lot more sexual baggage. When people get married in their 30s, the facts are many people are sexually active. So we partner with groups. I'll throw this out. There's a great group called the Union Movement that's trying to help young adults navigate the sexual landscape before you're married. And so we're trying to respond that way. That's a very real thing. I think new Canadians, we welcome new Canadians to our country. They have views about family and marriage that are unique to their own culture. And so we're trying to understand that. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, so much. One, that really leads into my next question, but because it's one of the things we're wrestling with is just singles and single men and both those that are may get married at some point, or those who are widowers, and then there's those that experience divorce. Like, how have you? And it's hard when you. Even for us, like, we often will think in terms of marriage and typical family, but there are a lot of people that still have a lot of need a lot of encouragement and even preparation for marriage or working through issues, and things like. So, how have you adapted to the single reality of things like you just mentioned, the delay in marriage, and then those that are finding themselves out of marriages?
Well, when we coach churches, we're trying to alert churches to that. And it's not the point of, how do you get single people to get married? I mean, we want to be real clear. Like, a single person is a complete person.
Yeah.
Who knows God, who can follow God, be used by God in this world for God's purposes. You don't have to get married. And so I think a lot of churches don't have a great theology of singleness. When we coach churches, yeah, marriage and families are forte, but you know what? Single people belong to a family as well. So we partner with groups like the Union Movement. We try to do teaching and training. There's a great book by Gary Thomas called The Sacred Search that we put in the hands of as many single people as we can.
We do have some people on our team who mentor and coach singles and actually lead kind of group cohorts of singles who are not necessarily looking to get married, but want to be in a great state of health should God bring somebody into their life to be married. So, yeah, and we do a lot of pre-marriage through our staff does a lot of pre-marriage across the country. And again, we coach and help churches develop a great pre-marriage program.
We offer an online pre-marriage program.
We do.
Excellent.
Check that. Sometimes people are looking for that.
Called Starting Marriage Strong.
Excellent. So Neil, you were just with us in Edmonton and you had a chance to speak to like 500 men in a room, and our whole theme was around being steadfast. Tell us about what that experience was like, but then tell us a little bit about what you shared and how you challenged the men to be steadfast.
Yeah. And I'll just put a plug. I know, Dean, you might be self-conscious about this, but guys, you should go to the Impactus conference. I know there's one coming up in Winnipeg, and then next season there'll be another routine. But man, it was a powerful thing, Dean, for me and for the 500 guys that were there to think and be open and listen to God. Fantastic. So thanks for inviting me. I talked about being steadfast, and I said, there's three people in our lives that are dying for us to be steadfast. And that's our friends and our spouse, if you're married, and God. They're just longing for us to be steadfast. And then the three things I said is you need to be honest, and you need to be vulnerable, and you need to be consistent. And I don't know, do you record those? Do people get at that if they
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So check it out. But the steadfastness, it's not boredom, and it's not,
It's
like I'm a real novelty guy. And if you're an Enneagram, I'm a 7, and, so I'm always like, oh, I don't want to be boring. I don't want to be routine. But you know what? That's not what steadfast is. Steadfast is it brings out the best in your friendship, in your marriage, and in your faith, because you're not all over the map. Like you got your eye on the North Star. And, that's what steadfast means to me. And I think that's what we're called to be.
I
love that.
think
Absolutely.
I think sometimes people feel like steadfast is just boring.
Yeah.
And I just want to tell you, for myself and for all the women that I've ever talked to over the years, we don't consider that boring. A man who shows up for us, who has our back, who has our best interests at heart, who's faithful, who's consistently kind, who's consistently does what he says he's going to do. There's nothing boring about that. It's very attractive. It's very sexy. Like it's a great trait. So I think it's really underestimated. And here's the other thing. When you have that steadfast man in your life, you feel like you can explore and go off on grand adventures together or in your careers, because you've got this solid, rock solid base from which to kind of branch out. So we love our steadfast man. He's been steadfast with me for 46 years.
Wow. Congrats.
Pressure.
Thanks for sharing that. The whole theme, and it kind of just reaffirms to me just the importance of that theme for today. And when we dove into the theme, we really found kind of two nuances of the word steadfast. One was to be steady and immovable against all the pressures that could come against you. But the other piece of being steadfast was to be steadfastly growing and thriving in your walk with God, but in your home, your marriage, your work. And so we just felt it was such a timely message for today. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing that, Neil. Thanks for being with us and challenging. I've heard so many good responses to your message, and it's so encouraging. And it kind of leads into the next question, because when I was thinking about this conversation, I was thinking, you think of family and marriage, you think doom and gloom, all the negative stats. And I was like, no, I don't want to go there. Like, I want to hear from you where you see signs of life and hope across Canada and around the world. Where do you have hope for families and hope for marriages, hope for singles, hope for divorcees? Where do you see God at work? And that's a big, wide question, but go for it.
Neil's elbowing me, so I'll go. Where I see a lot of hope is the younger generations are eager to be coached. They're eager to be mentored. They really, and maybe it's because they have seen their parents' marriages and families kind of crumble, that they're determined to build something strong and whole and well. And they're just wide open to being mentored and wide open to being coached. 60% of the couples at our conferences are under 40. Like, it's just, they're eager to learn. And I think that's super encouraging. And then the other thing is they really highly value marriage. Not all millennials are going to get married, but the millennials who do marry are highly committed and desiring to make it a lifelong commitment. And so I think this younger generation offers a lot of hope for us. They're eager to build good marriages and good families.
And as FamilyLife Canada works across Canada and builds more partnerships, we're really discovering that more and more churches are being for marriage. Like, I grew up in a church that was against divorce, but I don't know that I would say they were really for marriage in terms of nurturing it, encouraging it, growing it. And across Canada, there's more and more and more people and churches that are getting on board with that. Now, part of it's in response to the challenges on marriage. Got to be wide open, open on that, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of things happening.
Yeah.
No, no, that's fine. What are you seeing happening on the ground in churches? Where are you seeing some really signs of life there?
Well, in the churches that have been doing mentoring, oh man, they see incredible results. Because for one thing, I mean, it's such a relational piece, and we're all looking for relationship. And so there's such a good relational piece to mentoring. Secondly, it activates a group of people, older couples that probably haven't been used, haven't been accessed, haven't been activated in any way in these churches or in their communities. And all of a sudden their age is a strength. When you've been married 46 years, we get asked questions like, how do you do that? And I think couples who've gone the distance or who are going the distance have a lot to offer younger couples. And so churches where the mentoring program has been established, we see a ton of growth. We see a ton of growth in the couples that are being mentored, but we see a lot of growth in the mentors as well.
That's really good.
You may have something else to say, but.
Well, along those lines, let me give you an illustration. So this church we were at in Edmonton, one of the volunteers was, pushing the coffee cart, and she stopped and said hello because she recognized me from Weekend to Remember, or Weekend Getaway. And she said, oh, we brought 15 people to that thing, and we came home and we got fired up. We've trained 19 mentor couples. And it's just people are getting fired up. This is a non-vocational person. Right. This is a volunteer in the church. So there's these little things that are popping up all over, and people are getting fired up, and we're trying to just nurture them, but they're the ones that God's using to carry the message.
I love that. I love the whole intergenerational kind of humility and learning we can have, and just the power of getting churches fired up around this, because we can make such a difference. So for the person, the guy or lady who's listening today, and things are not the ideal currently in their family or in their marriage, what would you encourage them with today and where can they go find some hope and help?
Well, first of all, you just say, I'm sorry. Boy, I mean, we've heard so many stories, and we've walked this journey with so many people now that it breaks our heart when marriages and families start to crumble. And so I think just to say we're really sorry. We know how traumatic and how devastating that can be, first of all. But secondly, we would say, I'm sure Neil has some things to say too, but I would say stay the course. Reach out, get some help. There are resources available. There are people who care. You have to take some action, because otherwise if you don't actually take some action, the natural drift in relationships takes hold, and you won't find yourself drifting together. You'll find yourself drifting apart. So we do actually need to take some action. There's help available. Go to the local church, go to FamilyLife Canada, find a mentor couple, some people who will walk the journey with you, but then stay the course, because all the research indicates that if you stay the course and you're willing to work on things, couples, even 5 years later, can say they're in a much different place. It doesn't take as long as people think to turn the ship around. It just takes a few concrete actions to start turning it towards a hopeful place. And then you build on that.
I'm with Sharol. My heart goes out for people that are feeling not just difficulty, because we all feel difficulty, but feeling difficulty and they feel alone in it. Like that's a desperate place to be. And so if you're in that spot, we talked about vulnerability. Can you make yourself vulnerable and go to somebody who's trusted and who you think you can trust, and just go, I need some support here. Can I be honest with you? Now, the best thing is to set those relationships in place before difficulty. And, we teach this all over. Sharol needs some women in her life who are like that for her. I need some guys in my life who are like that for me. And we need some couples in our life who are like that, who are for our marriage. Who are steadfast. And then when things are hard, you go, man, we've shared some good times and I've supported you. And right now I need you. And here's what I'm dealing with. And here's what I would ask you to pray for me for. So, being alone is in difficulties. Painful. So, but can you overcome the temptation to hide, to think nobody's ever gone through this, to think that your situation is hopeless, because it's not.
Therapists tell us that couples wait on average 4 years too long before they reach out for help. And by the time that those 4 years have passed, it's a really hard work to find your way back to each other. So yeah, the strong message is reach out for help right away. You know, when you see things going south, get over your pride, reach out for help. There's people ready and willing to help.
If I could turn it just a little personal for you guys, but how have you, in the seasons of your own marriage, how have you taken some of these things and learned and grown through? Because sometimes as ministry leaders, you know, we can come across like we've got it all together, where, you know, it's just perfect, all roses. And the reality is we all struggle and we all have those things. But how have you, through the ministry you're involved in, but how have you had to apply some of these things, and how have you grown as a couple?
Let me just tell you one thing. Last night, case in point, Neil and I were doing a coaching session with a couple, pre-married couple, spent some great time. We were talking about conflict and conflict management and blah, blah, blah. We get off the phone, and within half an hour, we are in a conflict, not related to the conversation, but I think Neil forgot to do something on the TV. I can't even remember what it was, but we were in a little conflict. And Neil even pointed out, I said, do you remember what we were telling you?
Yeah, that's how gracious I was. Just talking about this.
So, yes, we're all in the same boat.
You know, the process of two people becoming one creates friction and heat. And I guess I'd encourage it. We still have conflict. I think what we've got better at, because then we ended up talking about that, I think what we've got better at is reducing the reaction time from when we screw up and when we start to make it right. And if you can do that, there'll be less damage, there'll be less brokenness, there'll be less pain, because we still mess up, but we try to react quicker and mend it quicker. So, you know, one of the real turning points for us about 20 years in, we had a real crisis point of being adrift. And we started a practice then that we've kept up, and now we call it a marriage meeting. We weren't that formal back then, but we set aside a time in the week where we could clear the decks. Because life's busy. We were raising busy kids in elite sports. And, you know, a lot of times you're just, flying around. We were both working full time. So you don't have time to talk, but we always knew that issue will keep and we can bring it up Sunday night. And the advantage with that is sometimes a lot of the heat had gone out of it and you can actually talk about it more sanely. But
keep really short accounts.
Yeah. So a marriage meeting, and you celebrate too. You don't just complain and fix stuff. You say, what's a win this week? What am I thankful for this week? And then, hey, this was a challenge this week, and I hope we don't do that again next week, you know?
And then one more thing I would say has been helpful is recognizing that you and your partner will be different in different seasons of your life. I sometimes say I've had 5 different husbands. They've all been Neil, but I've had 5 different men that I've lived with in different seasons of his life, and to learn how to love that person and appreciate that person and be curious about this person as they're growing and as they're changing. I think don't get in your lane and just kind of say, this is how it's going to be, and this is who we are, and this is how we do marriage. It's going to be constantly changing. And so again, back to the need for really good communication and really short accounts, because we're all growing and changing, and we need to, the way we do our marriage and do our relationship is going to change with that too. I like the version I have now, especially.
Thank you. You've got less hair, but, you know.
Version 5.0, apparently. That's fantastic. That was a masterclass right there, just on great advice, you know, marriage meetings, short accounts, shorten response times. Like, if we would just do those things, like, it would revolutionize marriages and our families. Oh, that's so good. Before we kind of wind up the conversation, I want to give you a chance. Like, our audience is primarily guys, not completely, but primarily. And so I'd like both of you to take a shot at what would you like to say to men, in regards to what we've talked about today, of whether it's being steadfast or just make a change or be more aware or whatever you'd like to challenge them with, but what would you, and I'll start with Sharol, you first, and then we'll end with Neil, but what would you like to say to the guys that are listening today to encourage them in their families and marriages?
Yeah. It's always challenging when you have to give it to in a short way, but I'll say two things. I would say show up. Show up for the women in your life. Show up for the kids you've been stewarded with. Like show up, like really show up. And we don't mean you have to be flawless, or we mean just be there, be present, be engaged, be, actively curious about us. I would just encourage you to, because that makes us feel treasured. And then the second thing I would say is, get serious about your relationship with God. And I don't want to over spiritualize that, but what that does for us as women, when our men are serious about God and we see that they're serious about their relationship with God, it just gives us such a peace and a security, because we know that we don't have to be in charge of their moral compass, but God is directing their steps. And if we know that they're following God's will, and He's their North Star, we know they're not going to go too off the rails. And so we just live in such peace and security when we know that. So I would say, make sure your relationship with God is growing and strong. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect, but be growing.
That's great.
That's my advice.
That's good.
And I'm going to echo that. The way I would put it is, make your first priority to be a godly man. Sometimes these roles of husband, or if you have the role of father or grandfather or uncle, stepfather, these are roles, but our identity is as a son of God, or in Sharol's case, a daughter of God. And to live deep into that is sort of first priority. And, one of the core verses for me is Romans 12:2 says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And acknowledge that our mind is a composite of everything we've ever read, heard, our own families, our friendships, and some of those things aren't healthy. So we need to be brainwashed in the good sense of that word, to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. So hang out with Impactus, get involved with some good things. And because as you grow as a great man, you'll, again, as Sharol just said, if there's a woman in your life, she'll trust you more, she'll believe in you more. But even whether you're single or married or never get married, you'll honor God by in that godliness.
We sometimes, if you invite God into your life, you get all of who God is, all of the fruit of the Spirit, the love, joy, peace, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control. Like, what of those things does not build a good marriage, a good family, a good friendship? More of God means better relationships.
That's really good. More of God, better relationships. That's a good formula right there.
Your new tagline.
That's a good tagline for sure. We should do some marketing. Where can people go to connect with you and Family Life Canada?
FamilyLifeCanada.com. And, there's an info box there. If you want to speak to me and Sharol, try that. But FamilyLifeCanada.com, they're connected to, again, these staff members across Canada. They can, there's a list of recommended counselors on that website, that are godly Christian people. And there's FamilyLifeCanada.com is the place.
Excellent. Guys, make sure you check that out and check out all the resources of Family Life Canada. Now, before we let you go, we said we would do a little speed round, a little bit of fun to end today. So we don't have buzzers, but let's see. And both of you can answer each question, and there might even see if we have some similarities or differences in the answers. But first question is this: what is your favorite where is your favorite place to go for a date night?
Oh man,
great restaurant.
Yeah,
and every city's got some.
Yeah, true.
We're foodies, so great restaurant.
Okay, cool. What is, and this may need to be separate, but the favorite way to recharge your own personal batteries? Do you have a hobby or an activity you love to do?
Well, I like to make love to Sharol, and I find that very renewing.
You have a hobby?
That's
no,
that's not a hobby.
It recharges.
It does recharge you. That's fair. I thought you were going to say golf, but no, you went there.
Golf's great. I love golf. Yeah.
Ironically, the way I recharge is by being on my own.
We have issues, okay? We got issues, yeah.
And I like my time alone, and that's how I recharge.
Yeah.
But
That's fantastic. We are not editing this out. This is good. What's the most impactful book you've read in the past year?
oh, well, I'm in the middle of John Mark Comer's
Practicing the way?
Practicing the Way.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm really loving it. So I'll
Love that.
see that one just because I'm right in it right now.
Excellent.
And for a variety of reasons, I reread Mere Christianity in the last year.
Nice.
And I mean, it's an old book, but it's a little book.
I'm
And it's really, really good.
It is timeless. Fantastic. Favorite passage of scripture or your go-to life verse? What would it be?
Well, Neil already said mine. That's my life verse. Romans 12:2. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Yeah, that's good.
And then you will know, and this is kind of a combination of a bunch of versions, but then you will know how pleasing and good God's will is, or God's way is for you. And I think, oh man. And that's just, I mean, I remember reading that verse in high school, and I applied it to high school. Like, I don't want to be conformed to the world around me. I want to be transformed. I don't want to be like all my other friends in high school, kind of living from party to party. And then I remember as a young mom, like, I don't want to be conformed. And then as career woman, I don't want to be conformed. I want to be transformed. So I think it's a great life verse in that we're always needing to be not conforming, but being transformed and finding our lives with God. So you stole my verse.
But you did way better. You expanded it. That's good.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of them.
There's lots of verses. There's lots of good ones. And I was going like, which one? So this has meant a lot to me. Ephesians 2:8 and 9, for example. I grew up in a church that really, and I'm blessed for it, emphasized, knowing Jesus. So by grace you're saved through faith. It's a gift of God, not of works, and nobody can boast. But it wasn't until I read the Bible for myself when I went to Bible college that I also read verse 10. And I made a promise then that I would never read 8 and 9 without adding 10. And I'm going to keep that promise right now. So it's a gift of God, so nobody can boast. And you are God's masterpiece, or God's handiwork, it says, created in Christ to do good works. And you got to hold that together. So yeah, God saved us, but for a purpose. And we're not just redeemed, we're supposed to be his workers and servants in his kingdom. That's a good verse for me.
We get to be his
We get to be,
Yeah. That's great. Last question, largely because I'm a coffee fan, but if you could go for coffee with one Bible character, not Jesus, who would it be?
Oh.
Ooh, David.
David, okay.
Eclectic life.
And I would choose, maybe it's just because I've been reading Esther. I would say Esther. I just find her fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating story. Well, thank you both for joining us today. This has been a delightful conversation, transparent. Learned that you love golf, Neil. It's been great. It's so refreshing though. And for everyone who's listening today, check out FamilyLifeCanada.com. Like I reminded of something you said earlier, but in this struggle sometimes that we're in families and marriages, you're not alone. God is there. He loves you. He is with you. His grace is sufficient for you. And there are people around, there are organizations and ministries around that would love to step in and help you, local churches that would love to walk with you. So Sharol, I'll take your advice and use it again, but do something about it. Don't sit and just be isolated or alone. Do something about it, and God will honor it. And I just want to say again, thank you guys for sharing your lives and your ministry. And we're looking forward to even more conversations in the future.
Thanks, Dean. It's
Awesome.
been a privilege.
Bless you. Bless everybody who's listening. There's more ahead, everybody.
Amen to that. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Impactus podcast. To learn more about living a life of purpose and godly impact, check out impactus.org.